In this episode, we're going to design our authentication pages, and we'll start with the registration page. So the first thing I want to do is to keep that panel, but make it smaller and centered. So we'll wrap that panel in a div. And we'll give that div a full width and a maximum width of small. That way the panel has a fixed width, but when the size of the screen becomes too small, it will automatically adjust to take all the space available. Okay, so next we want that panel to be aligned on the center of the page, so we'll write MX Auto. And at this point, we can start filling the inside of that panel with all of the base components that we've created before. So for the registration page, we'll ask for the full name of the user, its email address, a password, and a confirmation of that password. So let's start with the name. Base input, label equals name, and we'll give it a little bit of margin bottom for the next base input that's going to be underneath it. Next, we'll duplicate that line 3 times to define the other fields. And we'll have email, password, and confirm password. And let's capitalize name. We also need to specify the type of input for the email and the password fields. So for the email, the type is equals to email, and for the passwords, the type will be password. Okay, and now the last thing to do for our form is to add the register button. Base button, we'll make it primary and call it register. And let's align it on the right side of the form by specifying margin left auto. So as you can see, by using our base components, we've managed to create a very nice looking form in no time. But before we design our next authentication page, there is something I'd like to add on that form. I'd like to add an image on the left side of this form if the space is available. So that means that this panel needs to become a flex container, where on the left side we'll have an image and on the right side we'll have exactly what we have right now. So let's do that. We'll make our base panel a flex container, and we'll wrap all of our form in a div to make sure it's all together. We'll make that div a flex1 to make sure it takes all of the space available on that flex container. Now we can add another div before that form, and we'll give it also a flex1, and for the purpose of this demonstration, a blue background. Okay, so that's a good start, but I want the padding of our panel to be applied only on the form and not on the left side of our flex container, so that the corner of our image can touch the border of our panel. So we'll start by removing the padding of our base panel by adding no padding. Next, we'll add that padding back to our form by adding a horizontal padding of 6 and a vertical padding of 4. Okay, so this is more or less what we want. The problem is at the moment we don't have enough space to display both the image and the form at the same time. So when the screen is too small, I want us to completely hide that image. So we'll make that image hidden by default, and when we have a medium screen, we will make it visible by doing a display block. Okay, so now it's hidden, but if I increase the size of the page, the image reappears. So we leave it at about that size and reduce the size of our editor. And now because we've got more space, we'll increase the max width allowed for that panel. So we'll say when we reach a medium screen, give it a max width of 2XL. Okay, so now this is how it looks on bigger screens, and this is how it looks on smaller screens. Okay, so now let's display our image instead of that blue background. I've already added an image in our public image directory, this one. So let's use that. We will remove our blue background and add it here as a background image. So style background image URL, and that is image/register.jpg. Okay, and let's add background cover and background center to make it fit in our container. Okay, finally, I'd like to have a little welcome to paparazzi message on the bottom right corner of that image. So inside that div, we'll add another div with a little wave emoji and welcome to paparazzi. Okay, now to move it on the bottom right corner, we'll have to make that div absolute. And it will be absolute to that div, so we have to make that one relative. And we will stick it on the bottom right corner, so bottom 0 and right 0. We should also make that text a bit lighter, so text gray 200, and give it more margin, so a margin of 6 on the right and a margin of 4 at the bottom. Okay, and we are done with that registration page. Thanks to Tailwind CSS and our base components, we've managed to create a pretty decent page in just a few minutes. Okay, so I'm just going to put our setup back to normal. And we can move on to our login page. So auth login. And let's visit our login page. Okay, so similarly to what we did to our registration page, we will make that panel smaller and align it to the center of the page. So we'll wrap it in a div. W full, max W small, and MX auto to center it. Next, we'll add two base inputs, one for the email and one for the password. So base input, label email, and password. This will be of type email, and this will be of type password. And let's not forget our margin bottom 6, MB6. Next, we'll add the remember me checkbox. So base checkbox, label remember me, and again, we'll give it a margin bottom of 6. And finally, the sign in button, so base button, we'll make it primary and call it sign in. Okay, so I would like that button to sit on the right like we did with the registration page, but I would also like to add a link in case the user forgot its password. And I think it would be quite nice if the link could sit directly on the left of that button. So I'm going to wrap that button in a div container and add the link title forgot your password ? Next, we're going to give that title a margin left auto, so ML auto, and a margin right of 4 to separate it with the button. Let's also make that link a little bit more discrete by making it smaller and a little bit lighter. And when we hover on top of it, we'll make it a lot darker. Now that login page looks nice and clean, but as you've probably noticed, we don't have a page for that forgot your password link. So let's fix that. We'll go to our route.js file and we'll add two new routes. One that we can reach using /password/reset, and one that we can use using /password/reset, but by providing a token. In that first page, we'll simply have a form that asks for the user to enter its email address, which we will be using to send the user an email with a link where it can actually reset its password. And that's that second page here. So for the first route, we'll name the component auth password email. And for the second route, auth password reset. Okay, so now we need to create these two new components. In the components directory, we'll create auth password email.view and auth password reset.view. And now that the pages and the routes exist, we will update our link in auth_login.view by using router link. So we will replace a with router link and provide the two attributes. So to name, auth, password, email. Okay, so now let's initialize those two new components by copy pasting what we have in our login page. So copy, paste, paste. And for both of them, we will remove the content of the form and we'll write auth password reset and auth password email. Okay, so now if I click on forgot your password, I reach the auth password email page. But if I provide a token here, ABCD, I reach the auth password reset page. Okay, so let's start with the auth password email page, which will simply ask the user to enter their email address. So we'll simply have one base input component labeled email, and let's give it some margin bottom of 6. And we'll have a base button, a primary one, titled send password reset link. And because the title of that button is quite big, instead of aligning it on the right like we've been doing so far, I'm just going to let it use all the space that it's got. So class W full. Okay, and let's not forget to give our input a type of email. Okay, so that's for the auth password email page. Now let's say the user receives an email with a token of ABCD. So let's enter ABCD. And now the user will be asked to enter a new password and to confirm it. So let's open our auth password reset component and start with a base input labeled password of type password, and we'll create another input confirm password, and let's also give both of them a margin bottom of 6. Finally, we'll create a base button, again a primary one, and we will title it reset password. And now we've got space for it to sit on the right side of the panel, so let's write ML auto. Okay, so we've now designed our 4 authentication pages. We've got the register page, which displays an image when the screen is big enough. We've got the login page, which has a link in case you forgot your password that points to auth password email, and that page will send an email to the user with a link that it can use to reset its passwords. That link will contain a token in the URL, so /reset/myToken. And that's how we reach our auth password reset page, which is the last step of resetting the user's passwords. Now you've probably noticed that we've centered our forms horizontally, but vertically the forms are still attached to the top of the page. Making sure that the panels are perfectly aligned in the middle of the page is quite a tricky task, especially if you don't want it to bug when the screen's height is smaller than the panel itself. So on the next episode, we will encapsulate this problem by creating a new base component.